NACD's BoardVision, where leading boardroom advisors, governance professionals, and board directors discuss critical issues related to your responsibilities in the boardroom. I'm Peter Gleason, Managing Director of the National Association of Corporate Directors. I'm joined today by Bromilow in New York. Catherine's a partner in PwC's Center for Board Governance, which helps directors meet the challenges of their critical role. Catherine and I will be discussing the results of PwC's latest survey of corporate directors. Thanks for joining us today, Catherine.
Thank you, Peter. It's my pleasure to be here.
You know, we see all kinds of surveys out there from a variety of different groups, and we hear various statistics quoted in the media. At NACD, we've always believed it's important to hear from the director community, and we survey them annually to find out the key issues they're facing, where the board's emphasis is, and what practices are most prevalent. It sounds like PwC has taken a similar tack this year in its survey, and it'll be interesting to hear some of the findings. Before we dive into those key findings from your survey, can you tell us a little bit about it, Catherine?
Sure, Peter. For the past 8 years, PwC has conducted our annual Corporate Directors Survey to get directors' views on the issues facing their boards. In 2010, we heard from over 1,100 directors.
NACD's 2010 Public Company Governance Survey showed that there were 3 high priorities for boards. In order: strategic planning, corporate performance, and risk oversight. We think those are the right areas for boards to focus on. However, as we head into annual meeting season this year, with Say on Pay on the agenda for the first time, I'm guessing your survey showed some different things in terms of the immediate priorities.
As you know, one of the hottest topics in corporate governance is executive compensation. I can say that at almost every board I've met with in the past year, the directors are very interested in how various external stakeholders view compensation and in the direction of compensation-related rulemaking. Directors work hard to do the right thing, and our survey found that 83% of directors think that their own boards are effective or very effective in managing CEO compensation. That said, it's somewhat ironic that 58% think that, in general, U.S. company boards are having trouble controlling the size of CEO pay. In many ways, this is the classic not in my backyard response. In this kind of response, though, directors are aligned with many investors, legislators, and others who are also concerned about CEO pay. And so it's not all that surprising that the Dodd-Frank Act contains many provisions focused on compensation.
We've seen attempts to regulate compensation in the past, and it's never quite worked out the way it's intended. The SEC recently announced its new rules for Say on Pay, but there are a host of other compensation-related provisions in Dodd-Frank. If we take a look at your survey, Catherine, do directors really think that the Dodd-Frank Act will do much to address the various concerns people have with executive compensation?
Well, not really. Directors viewed clawbacks and compensation consultant independence, both of which are elements of Dodd-Frank, as not particularly effective in improving CEO pay policies. Instead, they point to 3 other factors that they view as most important. First is ensuring that peer group companies that they choose are realistic. Second, reevaluating compensation benchmarks. And third is setting minimum stock ownership guidelines and/or holding periods.
I'd agree with all those key points. They align really well with our Blue Ribbon Commission report on performance metrics. What other critical issues were tagged in the survey?
Well, shifting to another topic, there were some interesting findings on board composition. Indeed, 45% of directors think that there is a shortage of qualified directors for today's companies. And in particular, they indicate that the top 3 most difficult attributes or skills to add to their boards are, in order, racial diversity, gender diversity, and technology expertise.
Catherine, there's so much emphasis on the composition of the board right now and a much higher degree of disclosure required about who's on the board and why. The fact that your survey and a lot of the others I've seen mention a shortage of qualified directors makes me think that boards aren't casting a wide enough net when looking for new director candidates. Did the survey provide any indication of how directors are trying to attract the candidates with the skills and attributes you mentioned?
When we asked how they recruit directors, 86% cited using their own board contacts, the most common response by far. So we see that in boardrooms, the starting point for recruiting is still one of trust and confidence in a potential director's ability to contribute. This suggests directors may need to look beyond your existing networks to be able to add the skill sets and diversity that may not be currently present on your boards. And remember, your proxies now contain expanded information about directors' skill sets and experience, resulting in greater transparency into the composition of your board.
I couldn't agree more, and this will be really critical for boards moving forward. Proxy access, another key component of Dodd-Frank, is currently stayed in the court system. It's been challenged by the Business Roundtable and the U.S. Chamber, but we do expect a decision on that sometime this spring.
We expect that proxy access will become reality in the near future, and so shareholders' focus on board composition, including the collective skill sets, experiences, and diversity, will continue to be in the spotlight.
Catherine, you've really been focused on two main topics today, compensation and board composition. Given that, where should directors be focused right now?
Going back to the compensation topic, it's probably useful for directors to look at things like compensation peer groups and other benchmarks. And given that Say on Pay starts this upcoming proxy season, and we'll discuss that later in a future show, directors will want to be comfortable that the compensation discussion and analysis communicates the right messages. On the topic of board composition, as I said before, we encourage boards to expand their normal director search practices in order to cast a wider net and to ensure the proxy clearly communicates director qualifications and experience, as these will continue to be important with the probable adoption of proxy access.
One last question for you, Catherine. Where can directors find more information about the survey?
Peter, they can find the full complement of questions and answers on our website.
Catherine, thanks again for joining me on NACD's BoardVision to discuss the findings of PwC's annual Corporate Directors Survey. That wraps up our first session of NACD's BoardVision. For more information, visit NACD's BoardVision page or PwC's Center for Board Governance website. On behalf of NACD and PwC, thanks for joining us today.